The Marlins are making moves. They're making roster moves. They have some decisions pending. Those decisions are imminent on Josh Bell, on Jorge Soler. They still have time. I'm not sure who's running the ship right now, but they still have time to negotiate some deals with those guys. Will they? Equally, we look back at who's been removed from the 40-man and whether those are the right calls. This is Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins. This is your daily Marlins podcast. I'm your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up, of course, on X, formerly known as Twitter, at MiamiMarlins_UK. If you are listening to the pod, of course, hit subscribe. This is your team every day, and thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. There is a YouTube channel, of course. Make sure you head on over to YouTube and hit subscribe on Locked On Marlins there. Also, happy November, guys. Baseball is still being played in November. That's something that's on my mind too, but we'll talk about that probably at the top of the show. But happy 1st of November. The Marlins got busy right at the end of October. There was there were some decisions to be made. There were some roster moves to be made. So the Marlins have made some moves. So we're going to talk about those moves. Plus, with the World Series eking really close to a climax and a finale. I'm not sure if I've used the right words there, but it's heading to a finale. It is. It's close. There's been a lot of talk about this World Series. Not many eyeballs. A bullpen game has got everyone kind of freaking out yesterday. The Diamondbacks ended up getting spanked. I'm going to talk about this, but what it means is the decision that Jorge Soler and Josh Bell have to make is edging ever, ever closer. The clock is ticking for the Marlins. It's really ticking. So we're going to talk about that and both those guys on today's show. But this episode is sponsored by FanDuel, and you can make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, guys, let's start with the World Series. Start there. It wasn't even on the rundown, but, considering baseball is still being played. It is the World Series. It's why we play this game. Heading into the World Series, it's, right to update things. Here's the first health warning on this one. I haven't seen one pitch from the World Series. Not one live anyway. I've seen some highlights along the way, but, the 1 a.m. games, UK time for teams that I don't really care about, it's not happening. It just is not happening. I'm not going to be staying up and interrupting my routine for the Diamondbacks and Rangers. No, not happening. However, this looks to be the least viewed World Series of all time, potentially, which is really interesting. The one thing I'd factor into that is clearly there's various avenues in which you can source content these days, whether it's paid or not, et cetera, et cetera. So I do wonder how much, the modern day sports fan and the streaming options do impact that. But let's just take the numbers that are being calculated right now. The numbers are down. Why are they down? I think there's various reasons as to why they're down. I mean, I've spoken about this for the last couple of weeks, just about the postseason in general. I'm a Marlins fan, first and foremost, and I love the Marlins, and I'll follow every single one of their games. But frankly, when the Marlins aren't playing, I just don't feel the same about what I'm watching. I'm not invested in the same way. Granted, there's been some good teams on show. I mean, for me, I feel like that Phillies and Braves series was one of the highlights. Obviously, the Diamondbacks Phillies was equally a great series too. So, a lot of people turn at this and going, "Oh man, the Diamondbacks have made it," and all this kind of stuff. They had to claw their way through the Diamondbacks. They deserve to be there. The Rangers equally, they had a lot to overcome along the way as well. They've just, their offense has come alive. Now, all of a sudden, they're dinged up with injuries. Adolis Garcia, who's pretty much been the guy in 2023 in the postseason, ends up, having to be removed from the roster. Next thing is, Seager steps up and he delivers. So Corey Seager doing his thing. But I did want to talk about it because it's something that dawned on me earlier off the back of this kind of lack of eyeballs situation. fundamentally, the first thing we have to call out is it's November and they're still playing baseball. Like, how long is this baseball season? And baseball shouldn't be played in November. It shouldn't. I don't know what the history is on like World Series timings and dates, etc., but there's not really any need or rationale for baseball to be played into November. It's a summer pastime. And listen, guys, the clocks have come forward. Is that right? The clocks come forward last week. Actually, I don't know if they have in the States. They did in the UK, which actually really threw off my timings on Sunday. When I went to sit down and watch the NFL, I was like, great, 6:00. Great. Problem was, no, it was already like the first quarter had gone. So I don't think the clocks have changed in the States yet, but they have in the UK, which says to me, there shouldn't be baseball played. It's way too late. It keeps coming back for me down to this regular season. It just keeps coming back. 162 is just unnecessary, and it's particularly unnecessary the way this playoff situation is expanding, which creates chaos in the postseason, which is fine. So with all of this, 162 pretty much does become an irrelevant number. It's relevant for a lot of people that like the statistical element of the game. Naturally, if you shrink down the regular season, let's say to 140, and you shift all the calendar forward, that would impact how you compare year on year, all this kind of stuff. And I completely get that. I get it. But listen, guys, there's no need for baseball to be played in November. The teams in the World Series, they've earned it. They're not the flashiest teams. They're not the fanciest teams. A lot of people are going to, do a post-mortem on this World Series. Like, did it get the eyeballs on it? All these kind of things. But at the end of the day, I think, Major League Baseball will probably report the most successful season ever commercially in revenue. So Major League Baseball, I'm not sure they really care, to be honest with you. So it is what it is, guys. We'll see if the Diamondbacks can overcome this serious spot they're in. A lot of people going bananas about their use of a bullpen game in Game 4. Frankly, that's commonplace in baseball right now. And the Diamondbacks, they've run out of starter. They don't have a fourth starter. So you have to do a bullpen game. And as Marlins fans, we all know exactly how that feels. Absolutely. So let's talk about the Marlins and their 40-man moves. I did talk about Jonathan Davis a few days ago, and we were talking about like potential non-tender candidates, equally talking about Jazz Chisholm Jr. and center field and outfield options. We start to have some indication on where the Marlins are leaning, and where they were leaning with Jonathan Davis, as well as a few others, was to effectively DFA him, outright him to AAA, and he then elects free agency as he was able to. But before we do that, guys, and carry on this conversation, it's time to let you know about our good friends over at FanDuel. Yes, sir. It is absolutely time for FanDuel. And guys, right now, you can score early this season, this NFL season, with FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. $5 moneyline bet that wins, and you get $150 in bonus bets. Oh, my days. What an offer. What an offer. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, this is the time. There is no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, has a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, guys, back here with me, Peter Pratt, on Wednesday, the 1st of November. And we are talking 40-man. The Marlins make some moves on the 31st of October. I don't know why. And actually, the other thing to call out, I don't know who's making these decisions. Who's making them? I don't know. It's not Kim Ang. Who's next in line? I don't know. I actually have no idea who's made this decision, which is really interesting, right? I guess if you kind of sit back and think about this, it's like, did they have to make these moves right now? Like, did they have to? Okay, they've cleared a couple of spots on the 40-man, and, maybe they were thinking about, I don't know, Rule 5 drafts and protecting guys, etc. But something I've only just thought about while I've just been on this pod, the bright lights of the podcast, the microphone here, it's got the creative juices going. Who's made this decision? The decision I'm talking about, by the way, because I haven't even talked about that, is the Marlins DFA'd 3 guys. They DFA'd, let's start with some of the obvious candidates, I'd say, in Jeff Lindgren and also Emmanuel De Jesus. So those guys DFA'd outright to AAA. However, the headline one, Jonathan Davis, also outrighted to AAA, but he elects free agency. His Marlins career, at this point anyway, is over. Let me just go back then. Who's made that call? As I was talking about the outfield situation earlier on this week, maybe back end of last week, I was calling it out to say, the Marlins, what are they doing in center field? Jonathan Davis, the impact he had as a fourth outfielder, a defensive replacement outfielder potentially, or the opportunity to maybe move Jazz Chisholm Jr. back into the infield. Are they going to entertain that? We have our answer, guys. We know the situation now. Jazz Chisholm Jr. is 100% going to be starting in center field for the Marlins in 2024. And actually, for me, this probably points to that the Marlins will only now see Jazz as a center fielder. He obviously came up, played a bit of second base, wanted to play shortstop, played a bit of short, a little bit because Mickey Rowe was around, then played a full period as well at second base and improved, transitioned out of center. But the view and the vibe that Jazz always gave was, I want to be back in the infield. And actually, I want to be back playing shortstop. Jazz wanted to be, and does, or did, want to be a shortstop. Seems like now the Marlins have made that call. They're continuing down this path because, frankly, if they weren't going to go back with Jazz at center field, then Jonathan Davis would be on the roster, in my opinion anyway, particularly considering the glove in particular. The stick, obviously not that sexy. We get it. But as a glove-first guy, like, I'm not sure there's many better, to be honest with you, than what I saw from Jonathan Davis. He was absolutely stunning in the outfield. So I don't know who's making these calls, to be honest. I don't know why the timing has happened now, like why they would make these three moves for the 40-man. If anyone listening knows, I'm looking at, the fish on first guys that are obviously a lot closer than me. I'm just going off of what I see and like various bits of opinion, and I form my own opinions. Fish on first guys, they naturally are there, at the ballpark like every day. They've got ways to maybe understand what's happening. So probably by the time this is released, Eli's got a full article out there as normal with like all the details, because he's probably thinking what I'm thinking. They've made these moves, why they made them now, and who's made them. Either way, the byproduct is Jonathan Davis no longer with the Marlins. That means Jazz Chisholm Jr. absolutely will be starting in center field again. Is that a surprise? No, I don't think it is. Jazz made the transition. It delivered. And the Marlins this offseason will go and consider all options, I guess, at shortstop. There's tons of internal ones. But are they going to consider external ones? We'll wait and see. I don't think there's any free agent ones that are really going to move the needle. So the question then comes is, can you move the needle at shortstop with the trade capital you have, if indeed the Marlins want to go down that path? That is the question. Again, there's a full episode that is kind of like on deck. I haven't done it about talking about shortstop because I want to talk about it with Sean, to be honest with you. So we'll get into it in the next couple of days, talking about shortstop. But either way, I wish Jonathan Davis well. And, likely he will, he'll make, whether he find, the thing is, Jonathan Davis, there's no minor league options on him. And I called this out originally that if the Marlins are going to go through arbitration with him and effectively pay him $1 million plus, which is what he'd be due in arbitration, then, that would be them committing to him making the 26-man roster. And I think, considering that he's glove first guy and you've got Jazz there, like, I don't think you can do that at this stage. So probably the view is, we'll allow him to elect free agency. There's nothing stopping the Marlins getting Jonathan Davis back in the organization at AAA. And frankly, I can't see many organizations that are actually going to offer him a major league deal. So there's going to be a non-roster invitee type thing, or he's going to sign on as a minor league free agent somewhere. I don't think that particularly rules out the Marlins. There's still a way back for JD. So we'll wait to see on that one. I don't know. The other two guys that were removed from the 40-man, interesting, in that De Jesus was added, and frankly, it wasn't a good stint that he had. I mean, he had 2 games, but an 11.37 ERA. I mean, it didn't go well. It's fair to say. In the minor leagues, like we look at, last year, was okay. Ended up with a 4.7 ERA across a couple of different couple of different teams last year. Where was he playing? I guess in Jupiter. He was spending a little bit of time at A-ball, which is interesting. Must have been maybe a rehab start or something, but then ends up spending most of his time at Jacksonville. But 4.70 ERA, an 11 plus ERA at the big league level. De Jesus, they can absolutely move on from him. Was just a filler. Jeff Lindgren, I would say, basically the similar spot. Spent a lot of time at AAA, 4.88 ERA is from a major league perspective. He ends up with a 5.40 in ERA. Appeared in 3 games, 7 innings of work, 1K. Like, these guys are, there's tons of them. There's tons of them, and the Marlins can live without. Again, it comes down to the question of who's making this call. Why now? And who's made the call? Don't know the answer. Who else is making calls? And these decisions are looming. Is Jorge Soler and Josh Bell. Jorge Soler, as we know, will be opting out because, well, frankly, there's no reason for him to opt into that undervalue deal at this point. So there's going to be a couple of options that Soler has. However, for me right now, the main thing to call out on Jorge Soler is the Marlins still have time. They still have an opportunity right now to negotiate and extend Jorge Soler in some sort of capacity. There was a projection I saw on Soler that he was expected from a free agency perspective, maybe 2 years, 32, 33, 35 million. Somewhere in that range, 2 years, around about the 15, 16 million a year mark, kind of like Josh Bell money. So the Marlins have that opportunity right now to look to engage with Soler and extend him perhaps. They may have made the decision not to already. Soler may have made the decision also, but let's be honest, like when Soler's been on the field for the Marlins, it's worked. They've worked well. I remember Skip Schumacher kind of multiple times during the year just saying that and calling out and using the language like Soler, he's a game-changing bat, game-changing stick, and he absolutely is. And so taking both Sandy Alcantara out for the year from a pitching perspective and taking out Jorge Soler, they're 2 game-changing dudes. Absolutely. So the Marlins are getting worse for certain if they're not able to extend Jorge Soler. It might be the right time not to extend Soler. If you go 2 years, 16, maybe with another option at the back end, you could do. But, is that too rich? Is that too expensive for the Marlins, considering all the other dead money they've got with Avisel Garcia and Sandy Alcantara this year, a bit of Matt Barnes, a bit of Johnny Cueto buyouts? It all kind of adds up. They've got a lot of money invested, like, that isn't going to be on the field at all. And so they have to spend wisely. I don't see the payroll in terms of free agency, etc., like being significantly bumped up. Like, I think it's going to be kept like in check, to be honest with you. So we'll see how this goes, but the Marlins still have time. I think if they aren't able to do anything for Soler, and let's say Soler ends up signing somewhere 2 years, 30-something million, I will look back on that like the Marlins have had a missed opportunity there. Let's say he goes and signs like a Josh Bell type deal with the Cleveland Guardians. I could see that landing spot, to be honest with you. I'd look back on that and think, man, that's a missed opportunity for the Marlins. The Marlins, for all the things they did well in 23 and performed well, they were still one of the worst offenses in the NL. And yes, their offense, I would say, definitely ticked up a touch once you added Berger and Bell. But, the offense was significantly below average. And there's going to be teams that are going to come again big time, particularly those big teams with big budgets and a need to do well. And those are the Padres. They're the Mets. It's the Cardinals. These teams are all going to be throwing resources at it to get themselves better. And if the Marlins take any kind of significant step backwards, which they are with Sandy, and if also they take a step back with Soler, and, listen, the Nats are improving. There's a decent pathway where the Marlins end up finishing 5th, a distant 5th in some ways, in the NL East in 2024, which would be frustrating and worrying. And it'd be interesting to see how the year played out. But I can absolutely see a pathway here where the Marlins end up 5th in the NL East. I can also see a pathway where they get back into the postseason. But I think that links heavily into what happens with Jorge Soler. And so that's how crucial I think Jorge Soler is for this Marlins roster. He's a game-changing stick. And for a team that has been contact heavy and orientated, particularly in the last year, in the way Kim built the roster, again, the question is, with the new GM, which direction are they going to take? And again, comes back to, it's now or never with Soler. But who's going to broker this deal? If Soler's agent is reaching out to the Marlins right now, who are they negotiating with? I have no idea. Are they calling Bruce Sherman directly? Is Bruce Sherman negotiating? Is Bruce Sherman just DFAd Jonathan Davis? Is that what's happened? I don't think it has. But from an extension perspective, if they are negotiating, is Bruce Sherman directly involved in that at this point? You would assume maybe he would be. So this is kind of the problem, the way things with Kim played out, is at this pretty critical juncture here in the season where there's a few opt-outs happening. There's a few decisions around 40-man. There's some arbitration decisions. The Marlins don't have any of their front office in. So the decisions are made may not be the decisions that the president of baseball ops, or whatever title they're given, the GM, they may not be the decisions they would have taken. You would assume that Skip Schumacher's playing quite heavily into this at this point, but I have no idea. I have no idea who's making the calls, and I have no idea how this is impacting the Marlins' ability to extend, if they want to, a guy like Jorge Soler. Josh Bell, I think, is another interesting one, where clearly the dollar value is much higher than Jorge Soler. I think 16.5 for Josh Bell. Josh Bell, he finished the year well, but 16.5 is a sizable contract. I've always had the belief that Josh Bell will opt in to this deal. I think the way the trade went, the Marlins probably had a steer that he was likely to be opting in, and they saw this as a multi-year situation where they get him for the back end of 23 and also 24. So I think gut feel is Josh Bell had given his indication that 16.5 with the Marlins, I'm happy with that. He obviously had a good end to the year, was a big catalyst in terms of the Marlins making it. He actually was the only hitter that actually hit at all in that wildcard series. I get it that Josh Bell could well opt out, go back to the market, etc., etc. I get it. But 16.5 is still a lot to turn down. So I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued on Bell, but again, already said it. The Marlins do have a payroll problem at this point. They do. And I think there's a way to extend Bell, but flatten out the value a touch. Get away from the 16.5 and get it more like 12.5. More like an Avi type of situation. Maybe not quite as long as that one, but I think there is a way to do that. But again, who would be negotiating that at this point? Are they thinking about that? I don't know. The other thing to mention on Soler is if he does opt out and the Marlins don't extend him, they can submit a qualifying offer in the region of $20 million. Would they do that for Soler? If they were going to do that again, then you'd look back and go, man, well, just go 235 then. If they're happy to commit $20 million to Soler with a qualifying offer, he'll probably turn down. Maybe he won't. Maybe Soler won't turn that down. Would Soler be happy with a pay rise? Stick with the Marlins where maybe the window's open, he's performing well? Maybe he would. Do you know what I mean? That's a decent salary bump. That's 25% bump, I think. Top of my head, depending on what the arbitration number is. 25% pay rise on a team that you have performed well at, a team that's window looks open. You've got an obvious playing opportunity at DH. It kind of fits well for Jorge Soler. Young family as well, so wait to see. But in summary, the World Series, not many eyeballs on it. There's loads of reasons why, and there's going to be conversation around that, for the next couple of weeks. Overall, what I must say is the Diamondbacks and Rangers deserve to be there. And actually, particularly the first game, it was one of the best World Series games maybe there's been for many years. I didn't see any of it, but that's the feedback you've had. But from a Marlins perspective, some moves are being made. The question I've got is, who's making these decisions? Soler. The time is now for Soler, for any kind of extension. Who would be trying to extend Soler? I don't know. Are the Marlins trying to do anything with Josh Bell? I don't know. Gut feel is on him. There was some sort of indication that he would likely opt into that deal. Jonathan Davis, great impact. It was a great trade by Kim, I must say, at the time, because Jazz went down. They had no center fielders. Jazz went in there because there was no center fielders. Jonathan Davis came in and did a job. He did it really well. I still don't think that his time with Miami is the door is completely shut. I think there's still a way that Jonathan Davis could be back in the organization at some point. We'll wait to see. Maybe he'll test the market and see what's around. But I'd be stunned if Jonathan Davis gets a major league contract immediately, right off the bat. I think it's more like, non-roster invitee to spring and see what you can do with a club. Maybe ends up taking a minor league deal somewhere and just seeing what he can do. It may be with the Marlins. I don't know. But that move, that decision, not sure by who, says to me that Jazz Chisholm Jr. absolutely staying in center field in 2024. We're going to have a new shortstop in 2024, a new everyday shortstop. Could it be one of the internal candidates? Could it be a John Birdie, Garrett Hampson mix? Could it be one of the younger guys? Could it be via trade? Could it be via free agency? The Marlins have got so many different directions they could go at shortstop for a position that is so important for this type of club. So we'll wait to see. But the first thing the Marlins do need to do is to get this front office sorted. Let's get the guys in so they can make the decisions and start making the strategic moves around where are we going? How are we allocating our funds? Should we be extending Jorge Soler? If they don't, are the Marlins going to take a step all the way back down to 5th place in the NL East? Boy, oh boy. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day, guys. Thanks for joining me, Peter Pratt, on Wednesday, the 1st of November. I'll be back tomorrow. Feels like the right time probably to get into shortstop. So we will. I'll see you then.